This is Boxing Tickets and I in association with SB Sports. It's been a long time. It's been a long 6 months, but delighted to join once again with Ian Gaughran. It probably feels in probably longer. I guess it's been a very busy year. Obviously, the last time we spoke with one show just completed the year for 2023, and we're now nine down. So
Jeez.
it obviously it probably feels shorter, but it probably feels longer in a way with so much going on. But how's things with you?
Pretty good, yeah. Obviously, it's been it's been a busy enough period, and then the last little while it's kind of quieting down, just summer months and all that kind of thing. But it feels like we're about to kind of ramp up again between the RDS, Martin Horgan's show down in Cork, Mark Dunlop's show in November or in October. I'm sure November we'll have some one or two bits. Um, Looks like the Conlons will probably do something again before the end of the year. Mark might do another thing. I think Jay Byrne is probably looking to get into promoting as well. Barry Walsh has shows. Looks like there's going to be the second half of the year is going to be busy, so that's obviously very good.
I think from what I count, obviously nine completed, five more still to come, and obviously I think there's potential of a Belfast December card, maybe potentially a Galway card before the end of the year. Will Mark Dunlop do another one? Will obviously Barry Walsh do another one? You know, you sort of Martin Hogan, would he do another one? You're sort of going, how many can we max out at? You know, obviously in the olden days, they nearly had shows every couple of weeks in Ireland summer. So when we're looking at sort of record numbers, we're probably nowhere near that. But in terms of where
Yeah,
Irish
in
boxing
terms of
the last 10
recent
years,
history, yeah, exactly. The last 10 years were far surpassing. It's great. It's exactly what we wanted. It's exactly what we've been craving for, and it's now we're getting what we've looked for. Everybody gets to be busy. I think we probably have as good a quality with numbers that we've ever had. We've got some superstars and we've got a lot of hot prospects and we've got a lot of lads who are contending at domestic level, including a couple of mine now in a few weeks. So yeah, no, it's really good. I'm really happy. So long may it continue.
I guess when we sort of, I guess we'll do a sort of bit of a recap and obviously the year, obviously with the two Jimmy Morrissey, Kevin Cronin classics. Obviously the first one ended up I'm so lost with things now, and I spoke to Kevin the other day, and I was sort of thinking of the results. So I think Jamie won the first in Belfast, and then obviously the second one in Galway ended up a draw. But two, you could nearly sort of replicate it both fights in sort of the same way. Obviously, they were a tale of two halves sort of in
Yeah.
fights. Um, and I guess in some ways, probably nobody wanted to probably see a trilogy unless both lads we're getting really well paid for it. Obviously, after two really brutal fights like that, you just wish sometimes that fighters got more money for it because, particularly in the rematch, probably it's fair to say probably Jamie took a lot of punishment in the last couple of rounds, but he showed what a chin he had as well.
Mm. Yeah, and the people were saying, oh, they should do a third one straight away, and all. It's like leave them off each other for a minute. Cronin had come back and he had his fight. Now he's obviously fighting for the Irish title against Craig McCarthy. Craig fought Graham for Jamie's old belt, and now them two are going to fight. But it's similar enough to what people were saying with Dennis McCann and Baluta the other night. They don't need to do an immediate rematch. Let them build up again and let it stir for a while. Same with Jamie and Kevin. I have no doubt that their paths will cross again. We'll talk about Jamie now in a little while, I suppose. So I suppose Jamie, we'll get into it. Jamie's going to fight on October the 7th on Martin Horgan's show. So that's been confirmed as of the other day. And spoke to Martin this morning about letting you know, and we can break the news here. So he's happy to do that. So Jamie's going to return to super middleweight, get reclassified to super middleweight. He's going to vacate the light heavyweight title, and he will be mandatory for the Irish title to fight the winner of Cronin. I just need to get that fully confirmed with the ratings committee, the BOI, but that appears as though that's the way it's going. So obviously,
I was going to say, I guess it's the one that makes most sense. Obviously, Jamie's won the belt at 168. He's won the belt at 175 in the Celtic belts. Craig McCarthy probably in some ways, and I know that you were sort of aggrieved in the fact that obviously Cronin, got a warm up sort of 168 and then became mandatory for the Irish title, and you're sort of where we see sometimes where people have to jump through hoops to get fights, not slating anybody or organizations or anything like that, but for them too, they fight for an Irish title. They obviously had to go through different things. Where Craig McCarthy won the Celtic belt, became mandatory. Kevin Cronin and obviously the warm up back at 168 and became mandatory, and you're sort of going, where can some other fighters get that sort of luck along the way there?
And look, at the time we felt aggrieved because obviously, as we said, Jamie had the decision over Kevin, and then they had the draw. So as far as Team Morrissey were concerned, Jamie was still number one contender for the Irish belt at 168, especially considering that he had vacated the 168 belt because the BOI weren't happy for Kevin to just drop down and make sure he made the weight at 168. Look, as it's transpired, Kevin can make 168 handy enough. Well, sure, it's a hard slog for him because he's such a big guy, but he made it fine. He's going to make it fine again. But Jamie has proved in the past that he doesn't shirk. He was only went up to light heavy because he wasn't allowed to fight Cronin, and they rematched for 175 because the first one was such a close and contested result and all that kind of stuff. But like, Jamie absolutely is the most deserving of a shot at the winner of Cronin McCarthy, and I've no doubt the winner. I have my opinion as who I think probably wins the fight. I've no doubt that the winner would accommodate Jamie just purely from a respect point of view and a professionalism point of view. Like, Jamie has shown in the past, he's happy to fight at domestic level. He went over, fought Berkey, he went over and fought Ben McGivern. He fought Cronin twice. He immediately agreed to a rematch with Cronin. And like, we've loads of time for Cronin, and loads of time for Cronin's team. They're good lads. And Cronin's a super boxer, and he's a strong boy, and he for me he's favourite. I reckon he probably wins the Irish title.
I guess when you sort of look at that, and the other token, obviously, Emma Brennan's always been very vocal. You know, he wanted to obviously have a fight with Jamie, obviously, on the RDS show in September. And I guess in some ways, obviously, it hasn't worked out. Jamie's not someone to shy away from a fight, as you say. He's obviously been in Thailand for a few months. But obviously, you know, you're probably nearly surprised that Jamie wouldn't get off a flight and fight. You know, that's the sort of type of guy is
he did kind of toy with the idea, and I said, no, Jet, listen, you have to come back and do a full camp with Sean. He's flying over there. He's been training every day. He's been sparring away. He actually, there was talk there was a little bit of a kind of with the potential having a fight over there. There's a pro show close to where he is, and we were looking at maybe just doing it. But realistically, the best thing to do was for him to fight back here at super middle, get himself reclassified under the auspices of the BUI and go from there, because obviously what we wanted to do was wanted to fight for the Irish title at 168 because that's Jamie's weight, you know. That you do today, that he puts himself above all the boys domestically. I suppose he's just had the one fight, and maybe he gets the winner of the winner, you know. And in the meantime, he can have a couple more professional fights, get used to the pro game a little bit more. Not that he needs to, because he sparked people out in the amateurs, and clearly he can hit, and clearly he was very impressive up on his debut. But just as far as we're concerned, Jamie was the most deserving.
And I guess, you know, when we sort of look at, obviously, you know, we talked there about obviously Graham and Craig McCarthy fighting. It was a sort of weird time in a way. Obviously, you know, both sort of contentious sort of fights in a way. Obviously, I thought Graham done enough, and I thought Kevin done enough in the two fights. But you were in two sort of angles of it where, you know, with Sean in particular, because obviously I know Sean was very angry, obviously, after Waterford. Then obviously come into Galway, it was totally different, and we're in two sort of angles of it. But I guess that's boxing. One side, one you could be on the good side of the fence, the other time you could be on the bad side of the fence, and just to realise that sometimes these things work themselves out and overall.
Yeah, and people, I've had conversations lots of times with people who give you stick saying, "No, look, you can't fucking go and give out the Graham got beaten by a round and then claim that Jamie didn't get beaten by a round." But look, obviously, I'm always going to stick up for my fighters, but I'm also very honest. I don't like, we've analysed the Cronin and Morrissey fight and a couple of times, and I've sat down and myself and Jamie have spoken about it. There are a lot of rounds that you could argue went either way, and I'm sure it's the same with Craig and Graham. Craig's team think they won 6-2 or whatever. We don't. Obviously, there's been all that business with the knockdown. There was the slip and the knockdown. There's no real angle of it from the cameras, but like, I know you thought it was a knockdown. I think a lot of people at ringside thought it was a knockdown, and that changes the fight. But like you say, everything at this level and at the highest level, you see it every week. It's just a matter of human opinion, and no matter what happens, once that score is done and a hand is raised, you're never going to get it back. So, despite the anger and the emotion and all that kind of thing, you just have to move on, and that's what we have done. Graham is fighting Dom now in 4 weeks' time for the Celtic middleweight title. That a repeat of what they did. Kind of, when was that? This time last year?
Yeah, so I think it's actually just past a year. So and I know that obviously Dominic signed with you just afterwards, so he's pretty much with you now. What, about a year? But
Yeah.
they fought June of
Oh,
last
was it June? Was it?
June of
Yeah.
last year, and like, I guess when we sort of look back on the fight, like, I don't know obviously how this fight's going to play differently. Obviously, I know Dom's obviously had 2 defeats since, Graham's had 2 defeats since as well. So what sort of way that's going to shape into a fight? It's hard for you as a manager of both fighters. It's like,
The worst.
I know Graham's been with you the longest, but you obviously have to show respect to all your fighters and sort of have to sit in the fence and take a splinter. So, but it's going to be an intriguing, obviously, rematch. It was rowdy. Obviously, the Limerick ones came and represented in Belfast, and there's probably less traveling to do to get to Dublin than they would to Belfast. So, the RDS Arena and this whole card, I think, is going to be electric the whole night.
Yeah, that's it. And it's a strange fight. Like, as I said, I think we've spoken privately. This is brutal for me. It's awful. I like every time, sure, you're guaranteed a winner and blah blah. I'm also guaranteed a loser, and I'm guaranteed whoever loses gets slapped right back down to the end of the queue. Um, so either way, you won't see me jumping around in the ring afterwards because I have to have respect for winner and loser. Like, I'm going to be delighted for Graham if he wins. I'll be delighted for Dom if he wins. I'll be devastated for either one, whoever does get beaten. Maybe they draw and rematch up on that card up in Belfast. But yeah, like, there's an awful lot of imponderables, I suppose. Dom was coming in off a big layoff. He's on his second trainer since then. He's had what did you say? It was 6 fights since then? Has he had
So I think
six?
this fight will actually be. Let me see. So since he's joined you, he's obviously, this will be a 7th fight in under a year.
Right. So is that yeah, okay. So he lost to Duffy, couple of wins, lost to Ben, couple of wins, and then he's gonna fight here, yeah. So he really could be British Boxing Board of Control Celtic champion if he had started quicker against Ben. He let Ben rack up the rounds. Um, Obviously things have changed a little bit. He's under Ian Mahood now. He was under Dan. So since they fought the last time, he would have learned a lot from Dan, and he's still learning a lot from Ian. So from where he was, having had a layoff to jump straight into the Graham fight, Dom would have picked up an awful lot of different kind of techniques and skills and different mindsets from the two trainers he's trained under. So people will probably argue that makes it a closer fight, but Graham is evergreen. Graham feels really fresh. He's feeling the best he's ever felt. He's at me every day saying how great he is, and he's this and that, and I can hear it in his voice how much he's up for it. And so, like, I suppose you probably would say, because Graham got the decision over Don the last time, Graham goes into the fight favourite. But I know Sean Kelly's not taking it in that way. Sean is saying, look, we know that the Graham's and neither of them can fathom defeat. Like, Dom says he wins, Graham says he wins. Sean knows that he's got a tougher task in his hand this time, out of respect for everything that's happened in the meantime. So, like you say, it's going to be a cracking fight. And I'm not really looking forward to it, but I'll be glad for whoever wins.
I think I'm not sure if a joke to you or somebody else, but obviously, where we see the theatre of obviously WWE, we obviously know Graham loves his wrestling and stuff like that. So I don't know that obviously sometimes I can get slack sometimes for obviously being too honest with things, but can you see it as obviously, winner moves on, and what does obviously the loser do then? Obviously, I know Dom's obviously had a few more defeats, and I've been open to him and saying, at what point sort of is it too much? Where you don't want to go into a journeyman mode. Nobody does, and I know Dominic's too proud to say I wouldn't want to be just an opponent for anybody. He wants to be in a fight to win, but it's important for both to win on the dangling cart there. As the winner, obviously, will fight Fergus Quinn for the Irish title in December. So there's so much pressure on both fighters, and
Yeah,
it's who's going to show up on the night and deliver
that's it.
when it means the most.
That's it. And I know Dom has harbored ambitions of getting to 10 wins and winning a title. So this is huge for him. And he's putting everything into it. He's so fit. He works so hard, and he really does deserve it. And but in the way is a fella who knows how to win and knows how to dig in, and you would say knows how to beat him. So it's one of those ones. Where do you go from here? Dom obviously has much more time on his side than Graham would, but Graham really, really wants that Fergus Quinn fight back because things went wrong. There was a lot of stuff that was going on behind the scenes in camp. He made a bit of a balls of his weight cut, and he just knows that wasn't the real Graham McCormack that night. So he has been happy and happy and happy to get that fight back, and now this is a chance if he goes and beats Dom. This is a chance. On the same token, Dom goes and beats Graham. He racks up a 10th win as a pro, which is no mean feat, and he's racked up his first professional title, and he's under 30 with a new trainer, and like we've seen it so many times, it could just go like that. So, like you say, it means a ton to the two of them, and yeah, I am looking forward to the contest and the quality of the contest. But
it's a race to 10, so whoever wins gets their 10th win.
yeah, yeah, and Dom's mad about winning the 10th fight, and it's like I said, it's to win 10 fights as a pro in Ireland through COVID when there was nothing on. It's pretty impressive, like for the two of them. And like Graham has won titles. Dom has been beaten in 2 title fights. So this is a big opportunity for the two of them, especially to move on to fight for an Irish title. And then there could be some European on the horizon. You know, Graham's looking for mad for big fights. Dom's looking to win his belt. Don't know who wins. Don't particularly care who wins. I'm actually more concerned about the loser than I am for the winner. Winner will be fine. It's the loser. I just don't know how it's going to be to watch the fight. I don't know. I don't walk in with either of them. I'll probably stand in the ring and wait for the two of them. I don't know who I walk out with. I don't know how to. Just
you might as well wear a shirt and be the referee.
That's it. People, you get 2 purses. Fuck the purses. I don't care about the purses. Not that I won't not happy to be paid, but like there's a lot more because the two of them are friends. You know, so it's just one of those ones. But like they both wanted to fight. I have a responsibility as both of their managers to get the fight made for them. So that's what we had to do.
And I guess obviously one that's sort of not happening in that card. Obviously, Dave Ryan was obviously going to be fighting Shannon Kelly for obviously I think it was a Celtic welterweight title. Was that correct?
Might have been
lightweight.
Might have been light welter. We had it was one or the other. I think it depended on if Senna was happy to come down to 140, Dave was happy to do 140. If it needed to be 147, we were both happy. We probably could have met somewhere in the middle and done it at 144 or something and had it for the welter. But Dave had issues with his hand in the build up to Cork. Well, he was actually. I remember you afterwards saying how impressive he boxed and how stylish he was. And he probably could have got your man out there in Cork, only for the hand was causing him so much trouble, and he just really couldn't pop through it. In the aftermath, he had gotten it treated, and then everything seemed fine. But then a few weeks ago, we hadn't signed off on or agreed upon with Senna, but it was done. You know, we both had, myself and Butcher were happy with it. Jamie was happy to put it on, and Dave's after about a minute of a spar, the hand was too bad, and he had to get out. And people were going, "Geez, there's obviously something very, very wrong for Dave Ryan to get out of a ring because he's an animal and he doesn't let pain. But like he's got so much problem with the hand. He's been getting it treated. He's had a number of different opinions, and now it's a case of he's told you need to do nothing for at least 4 weeks and let this heal up and get it reevaluated from there. I think it's a ligament type of thing. It's not a bone thing. He's had scans, but obviously if you can't punch with your lead hand, like he's not going to go into a fight with Sen and Kelly, which is very much a 50-50 one-handed. You know, James Freeman did it on his debut, but like not somebody as dangerous as Sen, who will come at you and come at you and come at you. You can't keep somebody off with your jab, like, you know. And
as you said,
Dave said, I'll take it. No, you won't take it. Look, I'm pulling rank here. You're not taking a fight for a title with a dangling carrot maybe to fight Malloy after for the Irish, um, but not one-handed. So, and that's why he'll be there. He'll recover. He can get back into camp. Like he could be back by the end of the year. He could be back December. He's in the middle of this 4 week period where he's not allowed to punch. I think he has a problem with his Achilles as well, so he's not even able to run at the moment. So he's going out of his mind because Dave trains a lot. Um, so it's unfortunate, it's shit, but he's got so much time in his hands and he's so talented and he works so hard that he will be back in no time. It's just a case of getting that hand right.
I guess it's just a case of obviously when you know a fight can be made that easy, obviously just once he's back and you want both fighters to go into a fight at 100%. You don't
Yeah,
want to do anything other than 100%. And I think I'd said to him last week when obviously I'd heard that the fight wasn't happening. I said to him, look, make yourself 100% for a fight. If you go into a fight at less than 100%, you're only going to make things worse for yourself.
even you look at Graham was supposed to fight over in Wales on the card that Dom fought, and he was sparring McKean ahead of him, and he went over and rolled his ankle. And Craig Redden, his athletic therapist, said, "Listen, you need to get off this for a couple of weeks. What would be the point going over with a strap up the ankle?" And you saw what happened to Joe Ward in his first fight. Graham goes over on the ankle, can't get up, gets beaten. Where the fuck does he go from there? Do you know what I mean? So I was like, look, you have to take care of yourself. There's no point being a martyr and going in and fighting one-handed or fighting one-legged and taking a loss, and then all of a sudden you're back at the queue again. You have to be smart sometimes, and this is, I suppose, when you have to temper the fighter's pride and say, look, the answer is no. End of.
Since we've obviously last spoke, you've obviously added 2, 3 more maybe to the stable. Obviously, I'm not sure if Rudy was signed to them, but obviously you've added Rudy Farrell to the stable, James Freeman to the stable, and Connor Kerr. I guess they've all obviously had a fight, within the last 6 months. James Freeman's obviously had 2. Obviously, I guess you got sort of everybody in different angles. James had obviously had no amateur experience whatsoever. Connor obviously had fought at really good levels in amateur, and obviously Rudy was coming back from obviously his Celtic title defeat to Colin Murphy last year. So in each of them, you've added something probably different to the
Yeah,
stable.
yeah. Connor's very talented. Connor will be fast enough tracked, because of, as you said, his elite background. He fought Jude Gallagher in basically a playoff fight to go to the Commonwealth Games. He got beaten on a split, and Jude went and won the Commonwealth Games. So that shows you the fine margins, but it also shows you how talented Connor is. Um, he fought at Feather on his debut, really impressive over in Wales. He could go down to Super Bantam. I think if they do it right. I know he's late 20s, and he said, "Oh, Jesus, Super Bantam, I don't know," but I think he weighed in handy enough at Feather. He wasn't a horrible, grueling cut. We might test the water once and see. He's going to fight on October the 14th in the Europa on that Mark Dunlop show. So we might do that at Super Bantam, just underneath the feather limit. So he's officially a Super Bantam, or somewhere in between the two limits, and see how he feels about it, see how hard it was. If it's not that bad, gets his nutrition right over the course of the camp, well then he's dangerous at Super Bantamweight. Because he's very good. Like, he really is, and I know Dan is mad about him. They work a lot closer together, and they have done for years through Connor's old club and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, he's exciting, and he's going to fight probably over 6 rounds on the Mark Dunlop show. Looking forward to it because it's kind of a home debut. He made his debut in Wales, and it was really shitty because he had 40 or 50, I think, going over on an EasyJet flight, and the EasyJet flight got cancelled, and all of his crowd were left sitting in the airport. I think it was only his missus and his brother that had got over because they'd gone over with him. So he ended up with his missus, his brother, Dan, and his team, as opposed to 40 mad Belfast lads going over to kind of cheer him on for his debut. So that was a shame. But now he has his kind of homecoming and his home debut. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to it because he's very talented.
With James and himself, obviously, I know he's had 2 fights and obviously in 2 big cards back to back. Obviously fighting in McConnell's world title card and obviously fighting in the Phelan Falls Park just 2 weeks past. He's probably outgrown the small hall circuit already because of the tickets he sells, and hopefully he doesn't mind me saying it in the way I have. But when you have a fighter that obviously is building a base in the way he has, how can you put him on a small hall card? Because he's going to need so many tickets. Every fighter wants to be able to sell as many tickets as possible, and unless obviously you're doing the Ulster Hall, it's not big enough now for James Freeman. And hopefully he doesn't mind me saying in that respect, because I'm not just saying he's a ticket seller, because yes, he's no amateur experience, but he's working hard and he's putting in the work. I know obviously he switched from Dan Dean Mahood obviously as well as Dom, but nothing you can do but being impressed with obviously James so far.
Yeah, and that was one-handed. He broke his hand in the week or two before his debut. And he had a rough out debut because he didn't look for a walk around, right? Like that. That happens a lot, especially with debuts. Any man came to win. And Gaughran was very experienced. James went up to 154 to fight because we had 3 or 4 opponents pull out quite late. And so that ended up just being a tough out night at the office. But he got through it with one hand, and moved on. Then he went and won, obviously, at the Fela, first fight with Ian. And really impressive. He does, as you know, does plenty of tickets. But I want him to go through the small hall scene a little bit as well, because he has to gain the experience, because like you say, no amateur experience, a little bit of semi-pro, this and that. But everything is part of the learning experience, down to the small hall, down to the, you're only getting 100 tickets. He'll have them done in a day, but still, he needs to experience not the SSEs and not the Falls Parks. He needs to do the hotel shows, and he needs to go maybe fighting in a small show somewhere else, just to build himself up, because like he needs to get the rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds. And sure, look, we'll probably end up just doing something in Armagh, and that'll probably officially be a small hall show, but sure, he can nearly sell the thing out on his own. Let a few lads sell a few tickets to their families and their friends and gives them a purse, because that's the kind of weight he carries, that's the popularity he carries, and he's talented, and he can bang. So I know his opponent Ali the last time felt a bit of power, I think early on, first or second, and he told him after, he said, look, as soon as I felt that, I was on my bike, because as you know, journeymen need to fight every week or every couple of weeks to earn a crust, and they know full well how to avoid getting hit and how to avoid getting stopped. And he was clever about it. And it was probably a little bit frustrating for James and us on the team, because we would have liked someone to come back at him a bit more. But as soon as he felt James's power, he went running. But we'll have James is in no rush. We'll campaign him. Maybe we can get him out again before the end of the year. Hopefully, that'll be 3 nice fights over the course of 6 months or whatever it is. And we will hopefully have another 4 or 5, including our Armagh show, if we can get it, or in and around his area, so we can have this kind of similar to what Malloy did, I suppose, like almost like a homecoming. What we'll try to do with Dave and Shannon too, and just to kind of spread it around, because he's a popular guy, people will come to see him, and we can build a show around him.
Obviously on Rudy Farrell, obviously he picked up obviously a win he picked up a win in Spain. He fought out in Spain. I guess in some ways there's sort of probably more in the background sort of things that's sort of been happening. Obviously, Rudy, obviously it was looking like potentially him and Jared Hughes was going to fight in the Fela, and obviously Rudy obviously became a father just beforehand. But was it just going through? You're obviously the best man to ask in this, and I know I could sort of ask it in the other angle as well from Potty, who obviously is now his manager. But was it just a sort of discussion that was sort of happening that he probably knew the fight was never going to happen on the Fela?
We had originally that was the plan, and it was an easy one made for the Celtic, and then I think they wanted to do it over 6, and we were going to go, well, there's no point just doing it over 6 now. When we could, if everybody wants to have another fight, and we can do it over 8 for the Celtic. As it stands, there's only the 2 of them in that division really who can. You're not going to fight. TJ Darnley isn't going to come fight for the BOI Celtic. So it's the 2 boys. I know that there's the Belfast card later on in the year. Both can get out again over 6 or whatever, and we can build towards it properly. Rudy had his baby. It needed to be at home with his missus for a few weeks, and as a result, he was out of the gym. There's no point going into a firefight with Jared Hughes half cocked, especially if the lads didn't want to do it over 8, they wanted to do it over 6. So it was a combination of between having the baby, being at home there for his family, not really wanting to do it over 6. We could do it over 8 because they wanted to have another fight with Jared. Jared's had another fight, fair play to me, won nicely. I guess he probably will be out again soon enough. I don't know what officially what their plans are, but I have a feeling that he could be out again. We'll get Rudy out again as well, and they can meet later in the year. That's definitely happening. Both of them want it, and it's just a case of time. But I reckon that could be in that December build, possibly.
I think it's sort of, it's another one that's shaping up like Cronin McCarthy. Obviously, I think when that fight's announced, there'll be a bit of a war of words, and I know they've sort of been messaging each other, DMing each other, and sort of, having remarks at each other. It was sort of the fight that was sort of initially made through Instagram, obviously things in domestic fights, and I think Rudy had messaged a couple of days later, and I thought, oh, he just wants a fight with Jared, so I'd obviously mentioned an interview, and it's been slowly building since then. But it could be another great, obviously, domestic fight, and who knows, it might be another, rematch or a trilogy. It could be another
cracker of a fight. Two boys living close to each other. Like, if it's tight and it's only a round in it or whatever, if it goes close, so that's similar to, like you say, McCarthy or Morrissey and Cronin. Just do it again for the Irish. Easy. Obviously, we fancy the win,
have you any
and I know they do.
Obviously, I know with you losing a couple, and obviously Deco and Jason Hardy, have you any more signings hidden away, sort of, that I know sometimes you nearly mention them before they're signed, but have any new signings maybe on the way?
A fella called Allan White is gonna come in as quite a high level journeyman. He's a friend of Dom's, actually, from his army days. Very good, actually, very good amateur, and fought a lot of good names who are decent enough on the domestic scene. I think he might have fought Malloy. He's fought a lot of the lads who are quite good. He, obviously, being in the army, not really present, and so it doesn't actually have a Facebook or an Instagram or like that, and doesn't really have much of an interest in going building up for 5 or 6 fights and paying the journeyman. He probably wants to earn a wage, and he'd probably be Ireland's. We don't have an Irish journeyman, do we? So he'll come aboard. That's almost just waiting for clearance on his license. That's all his medicals and all are done, so that'll be done this week or whatever. And Myles Casey is another who is very, 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 very talented, and I've had a couple of conversations with him, so he's doing medicals and stuff. He's an elite amateur and is used by very, very high level pros to spar. He could be very dangerous around the featherweight, super bantamweight division. Like, Myles is very good. Obviously from the Casey family down that way, the Big Bang and all that. But I think Myles is probably the best of them, and very excited. Graham had him in touch, and yeah, we've spoken a bit. We're gonna get him signed up and contracted, and he'll be moved quick enough. He's that good. So kind of in and around. Not really looking to, like, as I say, busy enough with the stable and all that. We don't need to be adding too many, but if the right person comes along, well, then that's always an option.
Just picking this back up again with obviously Ian. Obviously my screen decided to have a major malfunction. It recorded him fine, but obviously I was getting to the stage where he couldn't see me, and so obviously just picking this back up again. But we'd sort of were coming to the end of the interview, and now Ian, so we'd obviously asked everything in terms of obviously questions I wanted to ask today. I did obviously open the floor up on Instagram last night, so for anybody obviously that watches the interviews and wants to get involved with the interviews as well, obviously we put up for questions.
I hope these are serious questions now, and I'm guaranteed it's going to be some stupid questions.
I think everybody's sort of giving you a bit of a bye ball. Obviously the first question you can see here is obviously who's your favorite Scottish fighter?
Italian Collins is good.
Maybe thinking current, obviously not of any of the past. So who would be your favorite current Scottish fighter?
I was really impressed with Nathaniel Collins, the last day, and obviously last night. He's brilliant. He's obviously put the featherweight division on notice. Big fan of Ben McGivern. Ben McGivern's probably my favorite Scottish fighter. Very fond of him. Heart in the sleeve. Fought Jamie and fought Dom. Love the guy. Loads of time for him and his team. And hope we see him again. Hopefully he doesn't jack it in too quick. Shout out to Ben McGivern. Hopefully he's watching. Good lad.
After that question came from Ben McGivern, so he'll obviously be happy. He'll be delighted. He'll probably have to throw you.
I'm glad I fucking said Ben McGivern now.
He'll be throwing you €10 in the post, although it'll probably be a Scottish £5 note you'll get.
Yeah.
We obviously have a couple of questions here in regards to obviously Jamie Morrissey. and obviously James Freeman, which we've actually spoke about
Yeah,
during
we've
the
covered them,
interview.
haven't we?
Obviously, how do you see Cronin McCarthy going on 16th of September? Obviously, you've no alliance with that, so where you can't pick the winner of McCormack and Donegan, you obviously can, and obviously the fact that, I guess, in some ways, it's two fighters now fighting that obviously have fought. Both your fighters, obviously.
Yeah, I've seen them both up close and personal. I'd say I would be leaning towards Cronin, to be honest. Obviously, Craig beat Graham, very close. It was, like we said earlier on, with the slip and the knockdown and all that. That was Graham going up to 168. Graham's not a super middle. Craig probably is now at this point. Cronin's a big super middle. He's a very strong boy, and every single fight he comes on, he's improving. He's got a very good coach in Jonathan Loons. He's given Jamie hell in the two fights. He's come back and won Cozy since. I think it's Cronin's time, to be honest. I think he probably just has that too much kind of intensity, a lot of power, and probably just a little bit better on the feet. I think he could potentially overwhelm McCarthy. I'm really looking forward to the fight because it's a clash of styles. But I'm a huge Cronin fan. I was always a Cronin fan. I'm a bigger fan since the two fights with Morrissey. A lot of time for him and his team. I reckon he wins probably quite well.
I guess as a side question there, obviously, probably one thing I know that, and I know that you'll say the same. Obviously, Kevin's very, very nice. He's a very good guy, but he, even though he's obviously a fan of the sport and everything else, he does everything right. Like he doesn't need, where say if you sign with Matchroom or you sign with Frank Warren, you need their PR team to do your work for you. He does
No, it's
his own
good.
PR. So he
Yeah.
obviously promotes himself on a daily basis. He actually spends money getting his own posters and stuff made. He gets his own poster made for the fight. He's a dream sort of fighter to have. And I guess in some ways, any fighters watching this, look and see what Kevin Cronin does, because this is how he's getting his opportunities, because he's marketing himself in the right way, where
Yeah.
it's a promoter's
And
dream.
his documentaries he did are great. That promo that was done on his TikTok was great. Uh, Very nice fella, very well spoken, and he can fight. Like he's got a combination of all the things you would want to have as one of your fighters. Like I'd love to have him, you know. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the fight. Big fan.
Obviously, I have another question coming here. I think you're going to fear the worst whenever I mention it's come from Graham McCormack. And he
Jesus.
wants to know, will I keep boxing until I'm 40 for the crack?
No, no, he won't. Do you know, I'll let him if he promises not to go to war. But that mad bastard just likes getting dragged into wars. But no, the answer is absolutely not. He's not going on until he's 40. Lauren
He's
won't let him anyway.
36 now, so I know when he sort of spoke last year, maybe saying he 12 months, and I guess it probably, Graham's probably someone he'd keep going to his 50 if he knew he had a chance of fighting for an Irish title. As I guess it's a conversation you sort of maybe have to have in private at some stage, depending on obviously how fights and things go. But obviously, if he beat, if, in an ideal scenario, if he beat Dom and he beat Fergus for the Irish title, it's obviously a good way to finish off. So maybe we could be in the last sort of 4 months, maybe of seeing Graham in a ring, but that'll be a decision he'll make himself along with you and Sean.
Yeah, we've had conversations about it loads of times. He'd like one big fight under big lights. Whether that's Quinn if he beats Dom, whether that's Dom, whether if he's beaten by Dom and he goes and fights a decent British prospect. But like, I'm not going to send him in as lamb to the slaughter against a Ben Whittaker or something stupid like that. Like that's just brain dead for the sake of $5,000 or something. That won't be happening. But if he beats Dom and if he beats Fergus, we could get him something nice for an international title, and he can ride off into the sunset, win or lose. But the answer is no, regardless. Not at least 40. I can't be dealing with him until he's 40.
One other question, I guess, obviously someone else had asked was obviously what do you see as a 2 to 3 year plan with obviously James Freeman? I know you sort of maybe touched on the fact of obviously having an Armagh show, with him having no experience as an amateur. Is it sort of keeping the stabilizer sort of on him for a bit where he wants to push on, because he's selling tickets? People might see to try and push him further, but you have to be honest and say where you don't have the experience, you need to do all your hard graft, and maybe going through probably every journeyman, maybe gets to 10-0 before you even look at even potentially the fact that maybe having even something that looks like a domestic fight.
That's exactly the plan. Get to 10-0 and build him gradually through the levels until we're happy enough that he's gained enough experience as a professional to take on a domestic. He's happy to do it. He's happy to learn. He works his arse off. As you can see, he's fittest man probably, and he's the most ripped man in Irish boxing. And he works hard, and he's so keen to learn. He studies, and he's a great fella. So that's the overarching 2-year plan. 10-0. Start to just until we get there. And we will. We absolutely will. No doubt in my mind.
Well, listen, that's the end of the questions of the Glad. There's no grilling session today. Nobody's obviously
Right.
asking, how the horses and stuff and that's getting on. We'll keep that for another day. I'm surprised they're obviously our favourite, trio, and Kieran McIver from Boxing Bants obviously wasn't on giving you any grief and any questions. He must have been sleeping.
Enough outside of interviews, so don't worry about it.
But look, obviously, thanks very much for your time as always. We'll hopefully catch up with you in Dublin. But obviously it's great to get a catch up after 6 months. Thanks for obviously being so honest and open as you always are. I'm sure we'll catch up with you very, very soon.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Really appreciate it. And see you in 4 weeks.
Take care. Thank you.
Have a good one. Cheers.
Bye. Bye.
Good luck.